Hello, welcome back. In this video, I'm going to show you how to manipulate the landscape and the height map to make your own landscape in the editor. Now, there's a couple ways of doing this. You can import your own height map from a third-party app like World Machine, or you can sculpt it by hand using the tools provided in the editor. To import your own height map, you go to Terrain, Edit Terrain. You'll get this, the terrain editor, and you can import your own height map from here. And I think it needs to be a 16-bit height map image, and these can be generated out of third-party apps like World Machine. You can also manually edit the height map in this view, but it's a lot easier to do it with the tools in the viewport rather than in this view. There's other things in here that you can mess around with. You can set the ocean height. By default, it's on 16. For this demonstration, we'll just leave it like that. And you can also remove ocean entirely if you so desire to. But if you do remove it, there's no way of getting it back. So I'm just going to leave it there for now. Well, I'll leave it there completely. We're going to close that. And if we go to the terrain tools in the roll-up bar, there is a option for modify. And in here you have all the different modification tools to manipulate the height map as you wish. So you can go to raise and lower. And in here you can pick out the outside radius. And that changes the size of your circle. So maybe we want it quite big. And then you also have the inside radius, which also creates a middle circle to this larger circle where it will pull the most and then fade out into the outer radius. But I usually leave that on default. And the hardness is how effective the tool is. So if you have it lower, it's less effective. Higher, it's more effective. And there's also the height, which also can control the speed of it raising or lowering. So right now the height's on 1, so it goes up in increments of 1, hardness of 0.2. So to show, you can raise the terrain on this default settings that we've got. So maybe we want the hardness a bit higher. It'll go up a lot quicker. I usually keep it quite low. I can slowly and gradually do it. And very easy just to create basic hills using this tool. And if you want to quickly lower this, you can hold the control key and click, and hold down the click, and you can lower the terrain. Let go of control, it's back to raise again. So say maybe we want to create a little island in the middle of our map, and hold down control and the hardness more. Let me do this quicker. There we go. And create a little island. Our height map. Raise that a bit. Camera speed up a bit. Let's make some hills around this. Well, that's the raise and lower tool. You also got one for flatten. And the same principles are here. The outside radius, as you expect, just like the raise and lower tool. Inside radius as well. And also the hardness and the height. But the height in this one is a bit different. The height, because it's flat, and it's going to flatten it to 100 height. So you can see it visually with this yellow line where the 100 is. I'll do that. I'll flatten to that height. You can also pick the height by going here and picking. Or you can go in the flatten tool and you can hold control and pick the hold control. So if I want to flatten it to this height, hold control, click, and then I can flatten it to height. Okay. Flatten that to that height. Maybe I want to make a cliff or something. You know, can use the flatten tool to make a sheer cliff, just like so. And then there's also the smooth tool, which is the other tool in here, which is pretty self-explanatory. This will smooth out the terrain. You've got the outside radius again, make it quite big. We've got the hardness, is how effective it is. So right now it's on 0.2, it's not so effective. The hardness a bit higher, does it a bit stronger. So maybe I want to smooth out the back of my cliff here. Players can walk up to the top. Okay. So once you've got your height map, you would want to edit the textures that are applied onto the terrain. Right now, the whole height map is flooded by this grass texture. So if we go to the layer painting mode, the layer painter here, you already have all the terrain textures that we use in the vanilla map, Miscreated. And these are all set up and configured correctly how we used it in that map. You can edit these textures however you want. So if you double click on one, for example, it'll open up the terrain texture layers, and this is where you can add new layers, or you can delete layers, or you can add your own new textures, or replace the materials for the current ones that are already there. But you can look on the CryEngine 3 documents online, and it tells you how to set up these and configure them manually. So I won't go into much detail. So we're going to use the ones that we already have here. So we got, I'm going to save this actually. So we got the cliff texture, and this one's configured in such a way that it only paints on certain angles. So if you see here, you can change where it wants to paint. So this is painting between 40 degrees and 90 degrees angles on the height map. And this is very useful if you want to flood textures, or you want to constrain your textures to certain elevations. So you can do the elevations here with altitude between 0 and 1024. So if, you know, I want this cliff texture only paint on surfaces quite like this, where it's 90 degrees, then I can set it up to do so. If you want to override these, you can click this tick box. There's mask layer by altitude and slope. You can turn that off, and then I can paint that anywhere. And if I have it turned on, I can only paint it on constraints. This is also useful if you want to flood textures. There's a button down here called flood. So when I click flood, this will go across the entire height map, and based on the constraints that you've set up, it'll only paint it in those areas. So if you see here, when I clicked flood, I went over the entire height map and saw where my height map angle is between 41 and 90 degrees, and applied this texture to it. You can see how bad my height map is. You can smooth that out. So it's gone everywhere now where it's in between those values, and you can set that up for, say, sand on beaches, and or you can have maybe another texture that applies around the edges of here where it's less sloped. It's very flexible. It's very useful if you want to get quick results from terrain painting, basically, or you want a very good base to work off. lots of other different textures in here. So maybe I want some sand around my little water bit here. So I can find the sand clean, which is kind of more rocky, I believe. It's under dry sand. Yeah, dry sand. This already has an altitude constraint on it. Like I said, to override it, we can just this. It doesn't go by the constraint I've set up for it. I can paint it everywhere. There you go. Basic sand. I know I'm being a bit messy with this, I'm just demonstrating. I'm sure you'll be more careful when you come to do your own level. There's a bit of sand there, we can do it under the water as well. There's also a wet sand texture as well we can apply under the water, which has more of a wetness to it. Okay. So there's two different things that I'm painting here as I do it. One is the actual detail texture material, which is defined by these, and one is also the color. Oh, in CryEngine they have a color map under the Heightmap, and this is used for when you zoom out and the detail textures aren't loaded, you just have the color map underneath. So, and this is defined here, so each terrain texture can have a color, but maybe I don't want this color sand, maybe I want it a bit more yellow. And click on the color, and I can pick any color I want. More yellow. It's a horrible color, but you understand. And again, you also have a hardness value here, and that's just for the color information. So maybe I don't want this color to affect the color that's already painted down there. I could lower the hardness, lower it to like 0.2, and the color is less effective. I put it to 1, color's more effective. And let's turn that to default. Sometimes you get this kind of edge where it's trying to blend the textures together. If you turn off Paint Layer ID, which is the detail layer, which is the detail texture, you can paint only just on the color layer. So if I turn that off, this is now just going to paint whatever color I've set here. So I turn that off, and I want a bit more of this color to come through. That's a bit strong, so maybe I want to lower the hardness a bit. Blend the two together. And I kind of want to select this grass texture again. I could find it in this menu here, or I could just hold Control and click, and now you can see I've selected the grass texture. It's the same with any texture, like the cliff here, cliff, grass, sand. It's very useful holding Control and clicking what texture you want. It's great if you want to just switch between two different textures without going through this big list. So we can paint some more of the grass color on top of here again for the sand. Or if I want to get rid of the sand here again, then on the detail layer, and get rid of it. Which is very useful. Maybe I don't like the green color of this grass. Now I can change the color, or I can change the material. Off that. is what I always used to do. If this default grass is too strong on the color, sometimes I get grass dry turn off the paint layer ID because I like this color more. This one with the grass again, get a bit more of that color back in. Let's get rid of this horrible yellow sand. Ooh. You can see that still some of the color information from that sand is still there. My grass dry again. Get rid of it. And then down again. So that's basically the way to paint whatever textures you want. There's a lot to go through here. It's very fun to just experiment with and look at what kind of textures you can use. Small leaves is really nice for just like forest areas and so on. So there's a few other terrain textures in here that actually have procedural properties to them. So we've got like short grass procedural, long grass procedural, flowers, basic forest, and these ones all have objects attached to these. So wherever I paint long grass procedural, it'll paint the grass with it. And I'll cover this in the vegetation video, but I just thought, since it's a terrain texture, might be worth mentioning in this video as well. So maybe I want just grass painted with this. Or if I'm doing a forest, I can get the basic forest one. And it's already got all the forest foliage on it as well. So let's say I have this texture here. And I want this grass to be using the procedural grass texture, which has all the grass already painted on it. But I don't want to erase this texture here. I can also mask out that texture. So mask by, and we'll mask it by this grass, which is grass. That on. Now if I put my brush big and paint, it won't paint on any other texture other than the one that is masked by. That can be really useful for some circumstances. If you want to replace a texture in an area with something else, but you don't want to repaint it in all the places, you can do it like that. So maybe if I want to replace the small leaves texture, so we look for small leaves, wherever it is, small leaves. And I want to paint, you know, dried mud on it. There you go. It's very useful for some circumstances. Okay. I hope that's given you a good understanding of how to use the terrain tools in the editor to create your own landscapes for your custom level. And also the terrain textures that we've also got in the level that's already preloaded for you. I do recommend that you check out the CryEngine 3 manual doc, which is online. I think we can post the link in the description. And there's a hell of a lot more detail that goes into there as for adding your own terrain textures and your own materials, or manipulating the terrain as well. What I've shown you here is very basic, but you can see how powerful this tool can be to create your own landscape as you wish. So yeah, if you go on our modding Discord or on our official Discord, there's a modding channel where you can discuss and ask questions and post what kind of mods you're working on. We would love to see them. Yeah, and on to the next video. Thanks.